We're joined this week by Chris Thompson. He's a machine learning engineer, and he's going to talk about cloud computing. What is cloud computing? Why is it important to know? He's going to give us a little demo of it using Google Cloud and talk about some certifications that could help you to really stand out to potential employers. So without any more hesitation, here is Chris Thompson.
Thank you, Forrest. And hey, everybody. So I have a pretty aggressive agenda here, so I'm going to try and zoom through a lot of stuff. If you have any questions, obviously drop them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them when I can. And I'm going to also try to leave time at the end where I can answer questions that anybody has about any of the material that we go over today. But I think I've had enough coffee to make this through in the allotted time, so we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm calling this one "Get Your Head in the Cloud." So what we're going to talk about here is we're going to do a little explanation of what the cloud is, right? You know, where it came from, why we need it. And that will kind of lead us into some implications for companies. You know, a lot of companies, you hear companies are adopting the cloud. What does that mean? Why are they doing it? So we're going to kind of cover that. And then we're going to go a little bit more fine grained and just say, hey, developers, why do you need the cloud? Like, what can it do for you and your workflows? And how can it kind of streamline what you do on a daily basis and make you able to concentrate more on creativity rather than, you know, some of the more oxy type stuff, right? I'll do a short demo just showing kind of a neat way to utilize the cloud for your applications. And that'll be on Google Cloud Platform. And then I'll go over, you know, you hear about cloud certifications. Well, why should you get cloud certified, right? And there's a lot of back and forth about the utility of certifications and what they can do for you and your career. But I want to go over kind of what those certifications are, why they're important, and what they can do for you. So we'll do that. And then again, I'm going to try and leave some Q&A at the end. So hold on to your seats. We're going to get started. So what is the cloud, right? You hear about the cloud. And when I first started, right, I come from a non-technical background. So when I was hearing the cloud all the time, I was thinking, wow, these guys are crazy. You know, they're just like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. All of a sudden, they were able to store our data somewhere above my head, right? Like it's all floating around somewhere. And originally I thought that, and what it turned out to be, and as I discovered more and more about it, right, and I've dove deeper and deeper into the tech field, it was actually surprising for me, like what it turned out to be. It was not what I expected. So, you know, let's talk about what some things that you use, right? You use the cloud every day, right? In your everyday life. Things like Google Drive and Dropbox are cloud storage, right? Places to keep your files and your image, you know, whatever those may be, images or, you know, whatever. Slack for messaging, right? That's a cloud-based service. Squarespace is in the cloud. That's a service for creating websites, you know, very point and click, drag and drop, right? Zoom for our conference calls. I'm sure you're all very familiar with Zoom at this point. I would, you know, hope so. And things like Facebook for social media, that's a cloud-based service, you know, and then Stadia, you know, some of these new services that are coming out for gaming. We're talking about cloud gaming, which is just wild, and I'm very excited about personally. And there's plenty of other examples, right? And so just know that you use it every day. Like when we say utilize the cloud, you are already using the cloud, but you know, these are software services, right? So software as a service, so it's cloud-based software services that you can utilize, right? That are cloud-based. Now, the cloud was not always a thing, right? It didn't always exist. And again, I haven't explained what it is. We'll get there. But just to give you an idea of where we've come from, right? Like it used to be that, let me get my cool little pointer out here. There we go, cool. Okay, so it used to be, right, that, you know, if I had a web service, right, some kind of application, or I was running a website, right, I'd have a server, right? And I'd have, you know, if I'm by myself, say in my house like I am right now, I might have a server just in my house, right? Maybe that's not the case. You know, maybe I was a small company, I was in an office, whatever, but we had servers on-prem, right? And that means on premises. And so what would happen is you'd serve traffic coming from the internet to your application, to your website, right? Like, you know, here you'd be serving traffic, right? And so you get it from, you know, wherever, whatever node you're talking about. So you're talking about a laptop, a cell phone, maybe not a cell phone that far back, but anyway, and then your desktop PCs, whatever, that traffic will come across the internet, come into your server, and it might look something like this. This is a bunch of servers, but this is a tower, right? But nevertheless, your traffic, you would serve that traffic. Well, it was all good and dandy, right? If you'd say, okay, we're expecting like 20 users, 30 users, whatever it may be. It's really low, but maybe you're just getting started. And eventually, right, though, if you're popular, and you would hope so, this traffic would increase, over time. And so over time, you would have to somehow serve that traffic, right? Your server would hopefully not become overloaded, but you'd try to avoid that. You need to buy a new server, and you need to load all your all your code into it, or your software, right? And then you'd have to rack it up, right? And you'd have to connect everything, networking, everything was done by you, right? That was all your staff, hopefully not just you, but maybe you have teams doing this kind of stuff, right? And it was a very big, labor intensive process and expensive for companies, right? So as time goes on, and this concept of time sharing is actually a very old concept. It's, dates back to like the 60s, right? When it was originally thought of. But, eventually over time, what ends up happening is a company like Amazon or IBM or whatever, they have like, I use this images, they have excess compute power, right? So that's what this pile of computers represents, is just they have all this extra computing resources, storage, things like that they're not using, right? And so they say, well, this is just sitting there not being used, and yet we're still paying for it. What if we could rent this out to people, right? What if we could get people to a smaller company to come, or whoever comes to us, and they pay us for using our compute, right? That way we don't have compute sitting idle, or storage, whatever, sitting idle when it could be being used. So you increase utilization, right? And it is a cost savings to companies. It's a cost savings to the people using it, right? Because then the company is managing the actual servers and stuff for them. What they're worrying about is just paying for it and then using those servers as needed, right? So this is like your infrastructure as a service, right? You've heard of infrastructure as a service. That's exactly what that is, where you're borrowing other people's compute, right? And using it on an as needed basis, okay? And so time goes on, and then Amazon, right, and Google to a certain extent, right? Amazon was probably the most well-known and the first ones to kind of think about this, I think, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure. And Amazon says, hey, what if we offered like services, right? What if we didn't just offer like computers, right, that you can just use, but you have to actually deal with? What if we offered, actual services where we'll like, scale and manage based on your needs and kind of offer those services to anybody who's willing to pay for them, right? And Google kind of followed suit. Google's original platform was App Engine, right? They said, hey, developers, we'll manage all your scaling. We'll manage all of kind of the ops type stuff that's involved with managing an application. And all you have to do is give us your code, and we'll put it on and deal with it for you, right? Which as a developer is a dream, right? At the time, it's just a dream. And so that's when you start getting the cloud, right? Like these cloud services, right? Like and these are more cloud platforms that I'm talking about. But what the cloud actually becomes is Amazon says, instead of just renting out our excess compute, and Google and Microsoft and all of those companies, instead of just renting it out, why don't we build massive server farms, right? And we'll just actually make this an offering to people. Like this is what we do, right? Like we will rent out as much as you want. You can use as much as you want. And you pay for only what you use. And that is a major concept with cloud, is it's pay as you go, right? You pay for what you use. And it's also managed. Now, there is some management, obviously, that still came along with like an infrastructure as a service, right? But as time goes on, you start getting these nice platforms, and you start talking about a platform as a service where there's other things involved, right? And so this is kind of an image. Before we move into the platforms, which is the major kind of push right now, right? Like there's different types of clouds too. So you might hear like public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, like all of these types of stuff, right? So terms, excuse me. And so the public cloud is something like a Google Cloud Platform. It's available to everybody. Anybody can use it, right? When you're talking about a private cloud, you're talking about something that is like only a single like company is using, right? So they only have access to those resources and they're the only ones that can use it. And then you have kind of a hybrid situation where you have some sort of mix of both of those things, right? Like some of the old ways of doing things, some of the new ways of doing things, private, public, that kind of thing. An example would be like the government, right? They use a public cloud to give us the information that we're entitled to, right? Or like whatever you want to say, like all the public information, they'll use a public cloud for people to access that information. And then the private data, or the data that they don't want us to have or that they want to keep secure, right? They keep in the private cloud. And that's kind of the idea, right? You keep your data secure in a private cloud. So, but what are like these data farms, right? Well, literally what the cloud is these data farms, but located across the globe and interconnected, right? And so you create what's like a cloud, right, of compute, where the idea behind it is that it acts as sort of a single computer. You don't actually feel the effects of the fact that you might have a data farm in Europe and you might have a data farm in Asia and you might have a data farm in North America, right? You don't know that, right? And your end users won't know that, right? I mean, you might know it, but you don't see it necessarily, right? And there's some caveats to that, but overall it acts as kind of a single entity, which before, if you think about it as a company, if I'm trying to scale to a global scale, right? That I have to do that. And that's hard, right? Like, so now it's point and click. I fire up compute over here, I fire up compute over there, and it's, you know, in less than 60 seconds, I have a global network, right? And the networking's basically handled for me. Again, caveats to that, there is some setup involved, but much less than would have been before, right? You definitely don't need necessarily a whole team handling every single little detail of all of these things, right? So what I want to do here is just take a look, right? So Google, and again, I'm going to talk from Google's standpoint because I just work with Google Cloud Platform. It's what I'm comfortable with, but these concepts will carry more or less to other cloud platforms. So they're in 22 regions. So when we talk about regions, we're talking about geographic locations, right? So they're big geographic locations. So like in the US, we have US West, right? US West 1, say. And so you have US West 1, was it B or C, right? And the letters represent zones. So there's within a region, different zones, right? And so what ends up happening is you have like US West 1B, I think, is the Dalles, right? There's a big server farm out in the Dalles, and then there's, you know, all these different locations. And so you can pick and choose these different regions and zones, and they're always adding more and more and more. And you'll find you're able to connect as if you were, so that you can serve traffic wherever your users are. So say I have users not only and here's the Oregon one. If I have users not only in Oregon, but also say in London, and then on the other side of the globe in Seoul, right? Then all of these connections represent actually fiber optic cables, an entire global network that Google has created. So Google has a private network, and actually the largest private network on the globe, right? They have their own micro internet within the internet, right? So actually traffic can travel faster across Google's network because of the fact that they don't have to traverse the internet. And there's some networking things that happen in there, and I'm not going to get into those, but like the idea is that you stay within Google's network for the most part, right? You can make jumps to the internet and out of the internet. And you're able to serve, but you have a data server farm over here in Seoul, and you're able to serve your users in Seoul. And what that means is that they get a faster service, right? Low latency, right, is what we're shooting for there. And over here in the United States, again, low latency. Europe, low latency. So this is why the cloud is really great, because you can get your applications or your services to where the end users are, whether those users are actual external users of an application or internal users if you're a company, right? So you start thinking about the implications for a company and getting things to internal users at your company across the globe, right? If you're a big company. So now these data centers, right? When we zoom in on these data centers, you know, these are these massive data centers, right? And you're talking a football field or 2 football fields of a warehouse, and it's servers, hundreds of servers. Basically, if anybody's, so computers, just lots of computers with lots of hard drives and lots of wires, networking that all together and working it out. And you just say, hey, I need to use X amount of CPUs. I need X amount of, persistent storage, and that's it. And Google will set you up, right? They handle all of that, like redundancy and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, the replication, all the things that are really hard, right? Or can be complex, especially if you're managing it on some kind of global scale or on a large scale data center. They handle all that for you. So you just tell a Microsoft or a Google or a Amazon what you need, and they handle all the details, the dirty details, right? And so here you just have rows and rows of these servers, and it needs, you know, all of these water pipes to keep everything cool. You got the cooling plants. These are all cooling plants over here. Just wild, you know, like I could stare at this diagram all day, you know. So you have your substation out there, and there's, by the way, security. These things have like 5 layers of security you have to make it through just to get in there. So not only is it secure in the way, in the digital sense, but in the physical sense, nobody can touch this stuff. I mean, it is very locked down. There are caveats. Again, there will always be caveats to what I'm saying, right? Like there's always ways to figure a way through, but this is much more secure than, say, you having to handle your security. So you have an army of Google, Microsoft, Amazon engineers handling your security, rather than you having an internal team of security experts trying to manage that for you. So that is very valuable for companies. It saves them money on labor. It saves them money on which is one of the highest costs of doing business, right? And we'll get into kind of like the skills that it takes to manage the cloud, because they do need cloud people, right? So now it's like, well, okay, we don't need these people, but now we need to manage these huge cloud networks, these, you know, huge cloud applications. Now we need those people. And there's kind of a skills gap. So we'll get into, like, that's part of the certification portion of this talk that I'll get into, okay? Okay, so hopefully that was good for folks. And so just real quick, I just want to show you, and for those of you that are interested, there's a 360 camera, and hopefully you can see this. So this is kind of the internal workings, right? What it looks like inside of one of these data centers. And there was another recent video that was done about the security of like Google data centers specifically, but a lot of these different, you see the security guard, he's very serious about his job. So like, watch out, you know, don't try to break into one of these places. But you see all of these servers racked row after row and all of these cables, right? This is what's managed behind the scenes, okay? And this is on a global scale. This is beyond anything that you as a single company might be able to accomplish, at least not in the short term, right? So, and they're always putting up more data. It's all about more data farm, or I say data farm, server farms and more servers, which is obviously an electricity cost. There's a lot of environmental factors that people are starting to, you know, get really critical of. And so there's kind of some controversy there, but that's the idea, okay? So now we see what the cloud is, right? It's literally a bunch of computers networked together across the globe, okay? And we're talking about giant underwater cables that go from the United States to Europe or Japan or wherever, and they're under the sea, and your data travels that, like through a cable, okay? So it's not magic, it's not floating through the air, it's flying at the speed of light under the ocean, okay? So that is the cloud, okay? And now we're going to talk about, so these public cloud platforms. So again, I was mentioning Google Cloud, which we just looked at some of Google's data centers, but then there's Microsoft and Amazon, right? So these offer services to, these are public cloud platforms that offer services to anyone who's willing to pay for them, like we said earlier, okay? And what kinds of things do they offer? Well, it comes on a spectrum, okay? So originally you had, as I was talking about, kind of infrastructure as a service, right? The IaaS, okay? And you'll hear all these like PaaS and SaaS and MaaS and like whatever. It goes on forever. But in this case, we're going to talk about just a few. So we have IaaS, right? So on this end of the spectrum, you know, it's very minimally managed, right? So this is your side where you're like, I need VMs, right? Virtual machines, which are just virtual computers, right? For those who aren't familiar. And, you know, I'll spin them up, but I need to manage like, you know, security and networking and like all of that kind of stuff, right? Accessibility and management of the OS and like all, you know, all the things that come along with managing servers, right? A lot of this is managed, right? You don't have to manage the physical servers, but you are managing these virtual machines, which you're spinning up, right? So this is the extreme end of this spectrum where you have to, this is all the stuff you have to manage, right? Now that goes this way where you have highly managed services where you don't even think about VMs. You don't care what a VM is. It's going on behind the scenes, and Google fully manages anything having to do with networking and all that kind of stuff for you, okay? And so you have things like in Google Cloud, again, this is Google Cloud, but there are services in all other platforms that are more or less similar to these. I'm going to come from this perspective. So you have things like Cloud Functions. Cloud Functions are fully managed services, right? Where I just take my code, say I wrote some code, and we'll see here in a minute, I'm going to give a little demo, but you write some code and you just drop it in, right, to a cloud, what's called a Cloud Function, which is essentially just a virtual machine sitting on top of a virtual machine. Technically, it's a container, but I don't want to get into containers right now. So it's a, you know, the virtual machine is managed. Everything is managed. All you do is you copy and paste your code in there and you launch. And it is immediate, more or less, in under 60 seconds, we'll say it's available for you to hit, you know, if it's an endpoint of some kind or whatever. If you're familiar with Python, you would use Flask. It accepts like Node.js and things like that, right? So this Cloud Functions would be a fully managed service, right? Where you don't think about compute at all. You only think about your code. That's the only thing you care about. Now, what's great about this is that if nobody's using it, right? Say nobody's hitting my Cloud Function or my Cloud Function is not in use. There's different use cases for Cloud Functions. If no one's using it, then it can scale all the way down to 0. And remember, we only pay for what we use, right, in the cloud. And that's really nice that it scales 100% down to 0, right? Because that means if nobody's using my service, well, I don't want to pay for it, right? So that's great. That's great for me as a company, right? And fully managed services are a really big deal right now. This is a major movement in terms of cloud platforms and cloud offerings. These fully managed services are the big thing, big craze right now. And so, again, I mentioned something, App Engine, right? The original Google Cloud platform. So this is the original offering. And this is sort of similar in the sense that you can launch your application on here. There's just a small bit more overhead that you do have to deal with when doing App Engine versus like a Cloud Function that's like a fully managed service. So we're talking about semi-managed to like fully managed service, right? But App Engine's still really, really great for your applications as well. And again, there's other things on AWS. If you're familiar with AWS, a Cloud Function would be like AWS Lambda. Okay, so same idea of these like serverless functions that you can use on the cloud. So what I'm going to do is talk about what's in it for companies, right? Like why do companies want to go to the cloud? And I think we've touched on some of that a little bit, right? A lot of it, and the main part of it, is cost savings, right? It is much cheaper for us to be in the cloud as a company, because we don't have any of that excess compute. When I have a server, right, if I'm managing my own servers, well, those are running whether I am using them or not, right? Like, they're running, and they also need maintenance, and they also need management, and they need all of these things, right? And so so you only pay for what you use, right? We talked about security, right? Both digital security and physical security, right? You don't have to, okay, again, you do need to think about security, right? You still need to think about security in your applications and those types of things. But let's say like Firebase, one of the services I was mentioning. In Firebase, you can launch your application on Firebase. You can go and just click, I want authentication. It sets up a database for you in the back end, right? For you, fully managed. You never think about that database. And then it gives you code to copy and paste into your application in the right place. You have to know where it goes, but copy and paste that in, and immediately you have authentication, right? You clicked a button, you have a database, you have authentication, and it's managed by Google, and you never have to think about it again, right? For the most part. And so those are the kinds of things that's like, well, that's great. Like, I have a team of Google security experts versus my 2 or 3 person team at my company, or whatever, it depends on the size of the company, right? But managing security for me. So that's really, really great. I really like that. And then partially and fully managed services, we talked about the pros and cons of those. Data can be accessed and shared much easier, okay? So this is really great. So like, if I want to share data with people, there's some hoops you have to jump through, especially the bigger the company gets, the more hoops have to be jumped through in terms of, protocols and opening up, or permissions and things like that. Now, there are permissions in the cloud, don't get me wrong, but when I say I want to share this data with somebody, right, and it's sitting in some cloud bucket, which is just a place to store data, right, in the cloud, I can share permission to that cloud bucket very specifically, fine grained, right, or to even a specific file in a specific cloud bucket, right? You can get that fine grained. And then the other thing is you can share entire disks. You can just send a disk to somebody or give them permission to an image, right? So onboarding new employees becomes really, really nice, because you just give them the proper permissions they need, which you can have groups and things, all the good security stuff that you can have on a server or in a like Linux environment or Windows environment. You can have that in the cloud, but a lot of it's managed by Google, right? So you just click, hey, I want to give them this role, and all of a sudden they have all these permissions in the cloud environment. They have access to all these resources in the cloud environment. Their machine maybe is like immediately up and running. It's so great. Like, the way that you can like onboard, the way you can share stuff with people. I use the cloud a lot, like literally just to share files, because like things like cloud storage are unlimited, right? Like I only pay for what I use, right? So if I want to share a bunch of video files, well, I just launch them into a cloud bucket, and then I just share a shareable link with people, and they just click and they get automatic access to my cloud bucket, and they can pull those files out however they want, right? And I don't have to worry about zipping the file and like, can I send it through email, or like, do I need to share it on? No, like I put it in a cloud bucket, and I give whoever wants access to my video files access to that cloud bucket. So that's really nice. Again, a bucket is just storage for anything you want, pictures or, video files, whatever. And then automatic scaling, big deal, right? Because we talked about before, it used to be a very manual process. Now, not a manual process. Now Google does it for me. I say I want more compute. Google's like, cool, we got unlimited compute for you. Whatever you want, we'll give it to you. Oh, you want it in China? Sure, we'll give it to you there. Like, wherever you want. I think China. I would assume China. Anyway, you get the point, right? Like, you can automatically scale globally, right? Globally is the big operative word there, right? So, it's kind of a big deal for companies, right? So let's say you're a developer and you're going to the Tech Academy right now. Well, you're like, okay, all this is great for companies, but what's good for me? Like, how can I utilize the cloud right now? Because like, I'm just me, and I hang out and I, code out my little applications or my scripts, and like, what can I do? And how can I start utilizing Google Cloud, right? And you're like, managed services. you know, you're like, I still don't understand what that means. Like, how does this work? What does a managed service look like, right? Well, that's where a demo comes in. So let's go ahead and do a short demo, and I'll show you App Engine, okay, for the quick demo. I kind of toyed between Google Cloud Function, App Engine. I think App Engine might be nice for folks. So it's the original. We'll do a throwback to the original Google Cloud offering. So again, App Engine is a service that allows you to just concentrate, right, on your code, right, which is what Google really wants. They want people to be able to, you know, be creative and not have to worry about all this other stuff, because that takes time away from you being able to write code, okay? And so I'm just going to sign in. Again, this is a Google Cloud offering. There's many other offerings through other services that you can explore. I'm not totally familiar with all of them. So unfortunately, if you ask me, I'll probably just give a shrug and say, I don't know for a lot of it. But again, once you understand the cloud, it's not difficult to say, okay, I'm moving to a new company. I have to learn AWS now. You can learn AWS, you can learn Microsoft. It really doesn't matter, right? Like, as long as you understand the fundamentals, you can move from cloud to cloud environment and understand the pros and cons of all of it and stuff like that. So we'll confirm here. So I'm just logging into this demo environment right now, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to download an application, we're going to test the application, then we're going to launch the application, okay? So I'm going to try and do this as fast as humanly possible. Wow, we're making good time. All right, you guys' heads might be spinning like mine right now. Okay, we'll keep going. We're doing good. We'll go to the library. All right, so these are the APIs. So everything in the cloud, in Google Cloud, and I would assume other cloud environments, is an API, right? Which is just an interface that you can give, ask for things, and it'll give you things back, or it'll do some work for you without you having to do the work or know what's happening in the background. You just send it some data, it does some things, and then you get a response back, right? APIs, application programming interfaces, okay? Which is a whole nother topic, which you can research on your own time. But we're gonna look at specifically the App Engine admin. So we're just checking to make sure it's enabled. So you have to enable stuff if you want to use it. It makes sense, right? Okay, so on Google Cloud, which I do know is different from other clouds, you have this really great thing, and it's called Google Cloud Shell. And it's my favorite thing. And essentially what it is it's a free micro VM, right? And a micro VM is a very, very small virtual machine. And they give you about 5 gigs of storage, persistent storage. And on your Google Cloud account, you can use this this shell environment to interact with all the APIs on Google Cloud Platform, and it's really, really nice, right? A little whatever it is, Ubuntu VM, right? And from here, you easily manipulate everything in your cloud environment without having to traverse the GUI and all the menus and all that stuff. Usually at the beginning, you're more GUI based, but as you get more familiar, you realize, okay, this is faster to do from my shell. This is faster to do from the GUI. You pick and choose kind of when and where you do that. So I'll tell you what we're going to do right now. So right now, what I'm going to do is this Linux folks, this shell, the commands are slightly different. And so just be aware if you go into like your Vim, and this is for like Linux people, but if you go into like your Vim or stuff, the controls are slightly different. So beware, like be careful, because I've definitely done some wacky stuff. But what we're doing here, and I'll blow this up for you guys. What we're doing here is we're just calling a cloud bucket, and we're copying a file from it. That's literally all we're doing. We're just saying there's a cloud bucket, it has some files, I want those files, copy. And this is just authorizing that it's cool if you use that cloud bucket right now, or the storage API. So we pulled some Python files from here, okay? And let me blow this up one more just in case for you. So let's do it, -L. Okay, so we have our Python doc samples, right? So these are our samples, and there's a README if you would want to do the README. I don't want to. So we're gonna CD into our application. Okay, so right now we're in our application, and you can see here we have our app.yaml, and I always do this to myself. I should always use -L. It just looks nicer. All right, so we have a YAML file. It's just a configuration file. Okay. We have, if you don't know Python, no worries. All of these files just represent a Python application. Okay. For those of you that are Python people, this should look very familiar to you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to test our application. Okay, so from within this directory, we run our server with our app YAML file. So what's really cool about the shell is I can run things from here, and I can actually view them in Google Cloud Platform. Okay, and so some people you might feel like this is too advanced for you, and like I'm doing all this crazy stuff. All I'm doing is putting in some commands that are launching my Python application. Okay, that's all you need to know that I'm doing right now. All of this other stuff, the dirty details, you can just go look and discover on your own, and I'll show you where you can find how to do this stuff and learn more for yourself. I have some really nice resources that I'll share at the very end, okay? But we're just waiting for our App Engine application to essentially, or our application to launch. And here we see it has launched. It's listening. It's not an App Engine application yet. It's only running from within this little VM that I told you about, right? So then it's running. We can see on, does it say? Well, it's running. We know it's, oh, here it is. Running on localhost, which is our VM, right? Running on port 8080. So if we go to port 8080, we can preview our app. And this app, literally all it does is print hello world. It's not a fancy application, but this is not, we're not concentrating on fancy applications right here, right? So we see hello world. Well, great. So our application works. We know that. We just tested it in a local environment. This is a local environment, Cloud Shell, right? It's in the cloud, but in a VM, right? So we're able to do stuff in the cloud. I am not on my computer right now. I am doing things in some data center somewhere in the world, okay? So this is an application that says hello world, and it's running in the cloud right now, okay? So next, we're gonna leave this. We're gonna go into another Cloud Shell. And what I'm gonna do here is right now, this is listening for changes that I make to my code, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into CD, or I don't even need to do that. I always type stuff during demos and it always gets me in trouble. So I try to avoid it as much as possible. So we're gonna go, I'm gonna use Nano because I always mess up Vim. I can do VI. All right, let's do VI. Vim is just a text editor for those that are wondering. And we're just gonna go edit our file really quick, okay? So I'm just gonna look in this main, okay? And don't worry about all of this. This may or may not make sense to you, but that's not our concern right now. What we're actually looking for is this hello world line right here, okay? So you see this hello world line right there. That's the line that's being printed, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna change this, and it's a little laggy, so I gotta be careful. And we're gonna say hello cruel world, okay? So I just changed that one line, okay? And so I dip out of my my VI shell, right? And go to here, and you notice there's some things happening, okay? So I'm gonna go to my web preview on port 8080, and we'll reload that. And hello, cruel world. All right, cool, it worked. So I've changed my application now. This is a Python thing, right? But I've changed my application in the cloud. So I'm doing development in the cloud, right? I can develop on this shell environment in the cloud. This is a free VM that I'm able to do things and test things on. And you can take this pretty far. We've done some things with TensorFlow on this shell. We've done some way more advanced like container applications on this shell. It is pretty nice, like the things that you can do with it. So this is a very, very simple example. So what we're gonna do, now that we know our application is working extremely well, is we're going to deploy, right? Because hey, it's working. Let's do it. So from here, right? One other thing to mention about this is that gcloud is automatically, okay, there is an SDK that's available for you to interact with Google Cloud Platform, okay? And I'm sure Amazon has one. I'm sure Microsoft has one. So what the SDK allows you to do is give commands to the APIs, the different services that are offered on Google Cloud. And that's what I'm doing here. So that's one other nice thing about the shell is everything's already installed. You don't have to configure any of that stuff. You can also do the Google Cloud SDK from your local machine and actually interact with the cloud from your local machine. Also very cool. Right now we're using the shell because it's good for demo purposes. Okay, so what we're going to do is a very simple command. We're just going to see gcloud. Okay, that's the main like tool that you use to interact with a lot of the APIs, right? So we say gcloud, we say app, and we say deploy. And remember what's in here. Before I say that, and everybody was holding their breath, and they're like, I can't wait to see this happen. Remember, all we have is like this app YAML file. That's our actual App Engine file that says what files are involved and all of that stuff. This is it, right? All we have to do is say gcloud app deploy. I could spell it right. This is why I don't type stuff. Gcloud app deploy. And we're going to pick our region. Remember, regions are geographical locations around the world. So we pick a region. We'll do whatever's available. What's available right now? Let's do US West 2, right? So 17. I'm going to hit 17. Okay. Let me blow this up a little bit. Oh, I don't want to break it. Oh, no. I put Control Plus, and now it's like freaking out on me. Okay. Well, anyway, probably shouldn't zoom while it's trying to launch an application in the cloud. All right, so I'm waiting. It says, do I want to continue? And I say, yeah, you bet your butt I want to continue. Go for it. And so it's uploading all 5 of my files that I defined to be my application. It's taking those, it uploads them, it's spinning up virtual machines for me. It's making all the network connections that I need. And all I did was say app deploy. Okay, one command, right? And all of a sudden I have a nice application being launched for me. All of my service is going to be configured. Now remember, it's not going to scale to 0. So even if someone's not using it, I still have to pay for it, but it scales down to very low. Okay, so you're not paying oodles of money, right? Not the same you would be paying, say, on-prem if you had some excess compute that you weren't using. Okay, so we wait. It's updating. Okay. And there'll be a bunch of fun output that comes out after that. So while we're waiting, let me see, are there any questions in here? Have I heard of Microsoft syncing databases, like literal underwater databases? I have not, but I will read about that because that sounds awesome. Never ceases to amaze me what these companies are doing, right? Like, all right, so here we go. All right, so it says to view my application, now I can press Control. To view my application in the web browser, run gcloud app browse, okay? Remember, all I did was launch my code, okay? So we'll say gcloud app browse. It gives me a nice little link here. I click it. And there it is. Application running in the cloud, everything being managed for me. All I did was write some code and maybe a small configuration file to tell it what I wanted, what files should be included. And that is how easy it is to run your application in the cloud with very little effort, right? Very, very little effort. So hopefully that blew your mind. It still blows my mind. And this is like a pretty simple example. It blows my mind, this stuff. So let me make sure I still have my presentation. I do. Okay, everything is working so well, guys. Unbelievable. Live lab. Okay, so I'm gonna ditch this. All right, cool. So we're back to demo time. Well, we're back to the screen of demo time. So we're gonna move on. So now, the moment you've been waiting for. Why the heck should I get certified, right? You just showed me how to launch my application. I know everything I need to know, right? Not so much, but we'll get into that, right? So let's get into some stats, right? So we'll talk about what's going on in the cloud world, okay? So 50% of enterprises, right, spend more than $1.2 million on cloud services annually. 50% of enterprises, okay? And these are all fairly recent, between 2018 and like 2020, these stats. So these are more or less relevant right now, okay? 30% of all IT budgets, okay, are allocated to cloud computing in 2018, or were allocated to cloud computing in 2018. 30% of all IT budgets, okay? So that's, could be public, private, whatever it is, right? They're allocating their budget to some kind of cloud resources, right? And then 30%, I should say. 83% of enterprise workloads. This is a big one. 83% of enterprise workloads will be in the cloud by 2020 was a projection. And that is more or less on point from what I've read. And then here's the big ones. So this will be why you should start studying the cloud as soon as humanly possible. Public cloud revenue is projected to grow by 6.3% in 2020 to total $257.9 billion, okay? So that's revenue that these cloud providers, whoever they are bringing in, right? Expected to go 6.3% in 1 year, right? And then the public cloud service market, so all the services we've been kind of talking about in terms of the cloud, are expected to reach, look at this number, $623.3 billion by just 2023. That's 3 years from now, right? And now these numbers aren't necessarily related, right? This is services and this is total cloud revenue. So don't conflate that. Oh my God, it's going to triple, right? But it's going to be a dramatic increase and it's only going to go up, right? This is just trying to show some of the trends that we're looking at right now, okay? Which if they're receiving all of this money, it means that they're going to need people to fill the roles to manage this stuff because it's not, they may have the people on staff, but they're going to need an army of people, right, coming up, especially as companies grow much, much faster due to the fact that they have a lot of this managed infrastructure being done for them. And so, like, you know, as a company, well, I don't need to worry about like, well, we got to get the servers and it's going to take a while and we got to wait. Now, if I want to scale, I do it tomorrow, right? Like I'm going to do it right away as soon as humanly possible. I'm going to do it tomorrow. But, you know, you can do it as soon as humanly possible and you can project your budget of like, okay, I'm going to have X amount of users. I know that it costs this much to spin up this many VMs or whatever it is, right? And I'm able to project my costs, right? And there's likely cost savings in there. So they're able to expand much more rapidly, right? So here's a list, and this is always a motivating factor. Now, I don't think that money should be your only motivating factor. If you don't think this stuff is really, really cool, and you don't want to really, really dive into it and actually learn it like on the side, not just to earn like a paycheck, then don't get certified. Don't even go into cloud. Heck, don't even go into tech. Because like the tech paychecks, tech is obviously a high, you get, you know, there's high pay in tech. Everybody knows that. If you don't like it though, you're going to hate your life. And honestly, like do what you like. You know what I mean? Like if you don't really like this stuff, then don't let this motivate you. But if you're a nerd like me and you love this stuff, then you should definitely look at this because I mean, we're talking, this is average too, so always take that into account. This is average salary. Just because you're certified doesn't mean you immediately start making $175,000 a year, okay? But it can help, okay? And so Google Cloud Certified Professional Architects, right? These are the people who have a breadth of knowledge about Google Cloud and they're like shallow but wide depth of knowledge about Google Cloud, 175,000, right? AWS Solutions Architect, similar role, 149, blah, 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 so on and so forth down the line, right? Any cloud certification, let me make this clear, any cloud certification will help you, okay? It doesn't matter what cloud you go into. Any cloud certification will help you. So if you are Microsoft certified and all of a sudden you see a job for AWS, apply. Like, likely if they understand what's going on, they'll be like, they can learn it. It's not a big deal. The skills are transferable, and honestly, clouds are going very hybrid nowadays where companies pretty soon won't even be in one cloud. They'll be in multiple cloud environments, and they're sharing across all the things. You read more about that. Super cool technologies like Anthos for Google Cloud and stuff are allowing you to store your stuff in AWS and compute and Google Cloud Platform, and like it's crazy. It's a wild west right now. So a really cool industry to be in. So salaries, right? It always matters. People say money doesn't matter, but hey, we know it matters somewhat, right? So how do I get certified, right? Okay, so these are my favorite, some of my favorite resources. And now I will say that for those of you at the Tech Academy, they do go over it like AWS. To the depth, I'm not sure, and you'll have to talk to your advisor or whoever about that, and maybe Rick can answer that question afterward, or Forrest. But for me personally, like I had to study on my own, right? Like, and most people have to study, their company might pay for it, my company paid for it, but at the same time, you still have to put in the work, right? And it's a lot of work. Don't think that these are gimmies. These certifications are hard to get and hard to understand, okay? So you got to put in the time if you really want to do it. But if you really want to do it, there's some great stuff. The first one is what we just used. The environment that I was using just now is called Quick Labs. And Google just recently acquired Quick Labs within the past few years, okay? And so what these are it's a platform. You have to, you buy credits, and you can buy a subscription to credits, or you can buy bulk credits, however you want to do that. And these are all individual labs that you can do, right? And they range from very, very introductory, things like what we just saw, right? Where it just gives you the pure, like, very, very beginnings of your cloud adventure, right? And all the way up to really advanced stuff, right? And so they have quests, which are like learning paths, right? And things like that. So it's a really great way to get hands-on experience. So you're studying other stuff and you're like, I don't really understand this, whatever, like the SQL database, replication or whatever, right? You can go into like Quick Labs, and this is not just GCP, this is also AWS. You can go in here and they have lots and lots of cool labs that will get you hands-on experience. And it's not terribly expensive. Again, you can kind of pay as you go if you want. At the beginning, it's very, very cheap. The more advanced the setup, the more expensive it gets. So that's kind of how they've structured it. But it's a great way to get hands-on experience. I still use Quick Labs to this day because there's constantly new technologies and changing technologies in the cloud. It's very, very fluid right now, and always. So it's great. It's a great way to like just quickly roll in and like, get skilled up really quick, or at least get a baseline understanding of, oh, I see what's going on there. Oh, I see how to do this. Okay, cool. So I kind of use it for that. So Quick Labs, definitely highly recommend. Okay. So originally when I was getting Google Cloud certified, right, I went to a cloud guru and they were pretty good. And then I went to Linux Academy, and I was like, ooh, Linux Academy was really awesome. And that's what actually helped me pass the mark. Now, I'd taken a bunch of courses up until then, so I couldn't really tell which one was better because I had just like taken so many classes. It could have just been that I finally got it, right? But anyway, a cloud guru recently acquired Linux Academy. So they have now meshed together. So they're one, okay? So I recommend a cloud guru for any cloud certifications, and they do AWS, they do Azure, they do GCP, they also do Linux, and they also do other stuff. If you're interested in other things like Kubernetes or learning about Docker and like all these other cool technologies that are coming out, right? Like DevOpsy and security stuff, anything like that. They also do stuff for that. So definitely check out a cloud guru. It's a monthly subscription. I think it's, I don't know. I forget. You can view the plans. Oh, we can view the plans. Okay, so you got business basic. Oh, that's teams. We don't want that for individuals. There we go. All right, free limited access, right? Which I would at least bump up to the personal basic, right? Because you'll get, one thing that was cool was you get, what's key when you're getting certified is a test bank. Okay, so like learning the concepts is super cool, but getting an idea of what's on the test, right? Because I failed the test the first time. I took it and I failed miserably. It was the hardest test I've ever taken in my life. I was not well prepared. So the second time around, I ravaged the test bank. I was just all about this, I wanted to see the questions because I wanted to know, and there's no memorization, right? You have to learn the concepts. You have to understand the structure of the cloud. You can't just memorize App Engine is for this and Compute Engine is for that. You do need to understand how to be a cloud architect. But that being said, they provide a test bank, which is really, really nice way to get some practice, real live practice with the tests. And again, this is AWS, Azure, and GCP. So check out a cloud guru. Highly recommend them. Really cool guys, great team. You can totally reach out to their team and they answer questions for you. So like if you have specific questions, you can just interact with them, which is super nice with the instructors and all that kind of stuff. So they did a great job. I know a lot of people, I see a lot of people getting certified off these guys, including myself. So I recommend that. My last recommendation, anybody who knows me, right? Anybody who's been to any of my talks or whatever, goes to the Python Pirates meetup, I preach books. The best advice I ever got when I was getting into tech was it was more like an anecdote kind of thing, and I don't even know if it's a real statistic, but they said, something, whatever, 90% of people who are learning to code, learning tech, that kind of stuff, don't read books, right? They just go on Stack Overflow, they go on YouTube, they go on all of these things, and no one reads books. But it turns out books are awesome. Who knew? Okay, so the best recommendation I can make is specifically for cloud, but for many, many things, is the O'Reilly platform. O'Reilly is doing crazy good things with their platform. You get access to not only O'Reilly books, but lots of other books too. So they have access to things from Pearson and like all these other companies, publishing companies, Pact, whatever, those books as well, which are hit or miss, but nevertheless, you get access to them. And so on here, they have a bunch of training guides for AWS, Microsoft, Google Cloud. And let me just say, literally, O'Reilly is so awesome. And I just want to preach this for a sec, because I've been using O'Reilly exclusively now for like a while, like months and months. They have things like interactive learning. Okay, so they have sandbox environments you can go in and use that come with the subscription. They have live online trainings, and we're not talking an hour. We're talking like 5 and 6 hour training courses that come with the subscription, right? From professionals from all over the industry. They have expert playlists that are made by experts. So if you want to learn a specific topic, they make playlists for you to go in and learn topics, okay? And then beyond that, one more thing is they have sandbox environments, okay? So if you go to sandboxes, you have a .NET sandbox, you have a Scala sandbox, you have a Java sandbox, a Bash sandbox. So all these sandboxes where they're just free environment, well, not free, you pay for it, right? But it's with your subscription, you can go in and you just code stuff, right? Just practice like with that environment without destroying your computer because you downloaded a bunch of crap that maybe wasn't right. Now you've got a whole mess on your hands, and your JVM's all jacked up, or your Python installation is broken, whatever, your environment variables have been deleted, whatever it is, right? This allows you to go in and practice with these languages without. So O'Reilly, I love O'Reilly, okay? And that's just besides the books, right? All the books that O'Reilly puts out. So an O'Reilly book, to give you a sense, is like $60 to $70, right? For those of you who know, this subscription is $49.99 a month. So if you read just one O'Reilly book a month, that immediately already pays for the subscription, pays for itself, right? And that's beyond all the other cool stuff that comes along with it. They also have like classes and different whatever. So books, courses. This is the course I would recommend. O'Reilly for books, and then Quick Labs for some hands-on, okay? So that rounds off my talk on cloud. It was a whirlwind tour of all things cloud. I tried to stay on topic as much as possible. We just squeaked in, I think, at the right time. And hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any personal questions, I'm always open to any like informative meetings or whatever you want to do. I also run a meetup. So if you want to join our Slack channel, go to Python Pirates. I run a Python meetup. Go to pythonpirates.org and you can connect on Slack. And I'm always down to answer questions there as well, among other people. I've got a bunch of cool guys on there that have decades of experience, much more than I do. So it's a great resource as well. And then we've got a bunch of Python resources on our website if you're interested in Python anything. So thanks a lot.
Good stuff. Yeah, great talk, Christopher, and really appreciate it. I do want to let our Tech Academy students know that we do cover Azure.
Oh, is it Azure? Sorry, did I say AWS? My bad.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. And it's kind of one of those things you want to learn this with your continued learning after the academy. So right now you're learning the basics, and as you go through your career, it's ongoing learning. But I do highly recommend learning the cloud, getting into it after you graduate. So, but I do, Microsoft has a lot of good learning online as well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put a link in the chat for Microsoft's Azure Learning. And it also has links to their certification. So I'm going to put that in the chat. But yeah, that was a great presentation, Christopher.
Oh, good.
Really good.
I mean, I was redlining the whole time. I was like, I wasn't sure if you were at the time.
you definitely you got a ton in an hour of information. That was really good.
Cool. Good.
We
how about we go on some of these questions in the messages?
Yeah, we do have some questions in the chat.
I can just, I guess, get on them. On the microserver, you viewed your Hello World app in the local VM. That was free, correct? Free in terms of it comes with Google Cloud Platform. Now, all cloud providers provide a free tier. And then beyond that, they also, if you sign up, they usually give you some allotment of free credits to use, right? So Google Cloud Platform offers $300. I think Azure offers $300 or $400 to just use in the cloud to explore and do things. So, but the free VM, yes, that was free in terms of it comes with your cloud, Google Cloud Platform, subscription, whatever you want to call it. Let's see. It was visible from anywhere on the internet, but it would cost a minimal amount to run scaling based on how much processing was required. So you don't pay for it. So it's what's called a micro VM. It's really small. So it's like insignificant to Google to like give you that. So they give you that and then 5 gigs free of persistent storage. So if I come back, it reinitializes a VM for me. And then I have that 5 gigs of persistent storage. It pulls it out of archives and attaches it to that VM. And so it's any files that I save to that persistent storage will be persisted across sessions. So if I cut my browser out and leave the cloud and then come back a week later, all those files will still be there. So that's what's really nice about it too, is you can persist stuff across sessions. It's not ephemeral in that regard. So, and then what exactly is the style of programming that a cloud architect will be doing? Does it compare to SQL database management types? So a cloud architect is not anything specific. I only I started a little in Java, but I've been primarily doing Python for almost 5 years now. And so I use Python, whatever, right? Some people use Java, right? It just depends. And a lot is going to Python, right? We know this. But there's no specific style of programming. It's kind of, the architect idea is not so much programming, okay? I want to let's make that distinction. An architect, what they're doing is they understand the cloud, right? They understand the way it works. They understand billing. They understand security. They understand semi-infrastructure and networking, just a little bit of everything, right? So if a company hires an architect, the architect's job is to design the system, right? And they know the offerings well enough to understand what services are going to be necessary. So you might use SQL, and I have in the cloud architect exam, they test you on thing like document databases, right? Which is like a Mongo style. They test you on HBase style, like Cassandra and stuff like that. They test you on SQL. They test you on all sorts of stuff. So there's no specific one. It's kind of just a basic knowledge of everything. If that makes sense, right? So there's no, it's not a specific style, I would say. It's going to be more designing systems. And if you can do that, if you like working in that realm, then I highly recommend the architect exam. If on the other hand, you're interested in more data pipelines or something to that effect, you can do the data engineer exam, right? There's other exams. The architect exam was just one of them, right? There's a security exam, there's a networking exam, there's a DevOps exam. I mean, it just depends on what you're interested in. So my recommendation is to figure out what you like and then go get certified in that, because the more you like it, the more likely you are to be successful in it, okay? Don't just go, again, don't go for the architect because it's gonna pay you, as much as a US senator, right? Like, maybe, right? Like maybe if you're really good, right? And that could be 20 years down the road. So do what you like. That's what I always recommend, but no specific style of programming. How long has this cloud journey been for you, from non-technical to proficient to giving demos? Yeah, like it's been long. So I started studying data science right out of my bachelor's, and I've given a talk on this, so I won't go like way deep into that. I can give that talk again in like 6 months down the road or whatever. That's a fun talk to give. But essentially what happened was I came out as an economics grad with a poli-sci minor and some math under me because I like math, you know. And I looked at data science. I was like, oh, this is going to change everything. Went into data science. That was 2016. Studied it for like 2 years or 10 months or whatever. 2 years or 10 months. That's a big jump. Anyway, I came out once I came out of my program, I studied at UCSD remotely. And then I came out of that program and got immediately hired to do like infrastructure and like all this crazy stuff I had no idea about. So honestly, this journey, this specific journey for the cloud and stuff, I've probably been doing it for 2 years. I didn't know anything. Again, 2 years ago, you asked me what the cloud was, I would be like, well, there's some beams and they go over your head. Like I literally didn't know. Like I could not explain it. So a lot of books, a lot of classes, a lot of hands-on, a lot of just trial and error, and you know. So I'd say a couple years is my answer to the specific cloud part of that journey, right? I have bought several O'Reilly books. They've helped me a bunch. They help me all the time. I read a million O'Reilly books. I love O'Reilly books. So, and then Microsoft Azure Learning. Cool. So I think that answers the questions. If anybody else has any questions, I'd be happy if you drop them in there. Did I get all of those?
Jesse just dropped a link into about a Microsoft syncing databases. I was curious if you had heard about that.
Oh,
have you
yeah.
heard about this?
No, I haven't. I think I saw that while I was doing the talk. I'm gonna dig deeper into that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the point of it is. I'm sure there's a good reason, but I'm interested in finding out.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us.
Cool.
We want to say thank you again so much, Chris. This was incredibly informative, super, super valuable. We would love to have you back for another one. And once again, everybody, pythonpirates.org if you want to get in touch with Chris or find him on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'd love to answer all your other questions. But yep, everybody have a great day, and thanks again.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chris.
Christopher. That was great.
No problem.